Welcome, Stewie, and welcome to the first of our podcast series of our Old Collegians, specifically focusing on our sporting Old Collegians at the moment. And first guest tonight is Stewart McSweyn. Stewie, welcome, and thank you for giving us your time. You've just mentioned that you're at the airport about to head off to Malta, so thank you for you giving us your time tonight. And congratulations on an amazing season. We'll get to the facts and figures a bit later on, but you must be really proud of what you've done this season. So congratulations from us all.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ross. But yeah, it's been a pretty awesome season. It kind of looked like we might not get a season at the start of COVID back in Australia, but everything came together and we're able to get off and get to Europe for the last 3 months. And then, yeah, I was able to piece some pretty good results together, which is obviously a good reward for making the trip over.
And joining us tonight, we've also got current Year 11 student, Ben Grima. Now, Ben is an up-and-coming swimmer who also has ambitions of going to the Olympics one day. So I thought it'd be nice for Ben to join in this conversation and talk to someone who is going to the Olympics and perhaps gain a bit of knowledge from you as well. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me. This is a great opportunity.
So, Stu, you talked then about getting over to Europe and so forth. I just want to set the background for those people listening and watching this podcast. Can you tell us where you're from?
So originally I'm from King Island. So obviously Ballarat Clarendon had the campus down there for a lot of the Year 9 students. It's a small island. There's only 1,500 people. So yeah, I was lucky enough brought up on a farm down there. So unfortunately, I don't get to go back quite as much as I'd like anymore, but it's still my favourite place in the world. I love getting home. I think last year I get home for about 3 weeks a year. So, yeah, it's something I look forward to doing over Christmas each year.
All right. So King Island, you've said 1,500 on the whole island. Now I just want to read out where you have set your personal best times for your running. Italy, Qatar, the UK, USA, Belgium, Sweden. That's the list I've got. Did you ever think that running could take you from King Island to all over the world?
Yeah, I think like any kid, you probably don't kind of realise the potential that it could do. I think especially when I was running in King Island and even in Ballarat, it's kind of, you feel like you're almost part of like a small world. You're kind of just in a state training away. So yeah, I think I never thought I'd get to go overseas and compete professionally, and then to be able to do it the last couple of years. And then obviously some of the countries I've been able to go to is pretty amazing. I think there's not many guys my age that probably get to go to 10 plus different countries a year. So yeah, I feel pretty fortunate to be able to do that each European summer.
In the old days, we'd say your passport would be fairly full, but of course with electronic passports, that's not the case anymore. I read an interview, interestingly, you at the age of 13, a PE teacher that you had, must have been down on King Island, suggested that you stop playing footy because you're too little and that you take up running. How good at footy were you, mate? Because I read the rest of that article and there was a bit in there. Tell us how good at footy were you?
Rumours has it not a bad player. No, I was very ordinary. I think it was good advice. I wasn't, sometimes I was all right purely because I could run, but I was a little kid. I just used to get hammered. And I think I wasn't a winter sport guy. I was too small and skinny, so I didn't like getting out in the field in the freezing cold. So I think that was probably to this day almost the best advice I've had, when he said, yeah, you should probably pack it up and focus on running. And it slowly got a little bit better from there on.
I hope you take that PE teacher a gift every time you go home. So King Island, you and your twin brother Gus arrived at Ballarat Clarendon College in Year 7. That must have been a massive culture shock for you.
Yeah, I think it was. Obviously, we're coming from such a small community. You kind of, even just going to school when, you'd know everyone at the school. I think in King Island there's 140 people maybe at the school. And then going to school with, I don't know how many Clarendon has now, but maybe 1,200 plus people, which is crazy to see how big the school community is, I think. But I think it was kind of daunting when we got there, but we were pretty lucky. I think there's not many more supportive environments than the boys' boarding house. It's kind of, you feel like you're part of a family. I know when we were there was 2 other Year 7s, but you'd have the year 8s, the year 9s who felt like they were brothers to you. So we're kind of lucky that even though I went over with just my twin brother, I felt like I had a different family over there, which made the transition pretty easy. Because I think, obviously, when our parents were sending us, when we were I think we just turned 13 when we went over. They were pretty nervous, but I think after seeing how much we enjoyed it that first year, I think the worries quickly left from their side.
So the rumours aren't true that you were recruited to come and play football. We've put that to bed. But you do hold the record for the school's annual lap of the lake. I've checked the records, and it's 18:38 you ran. I can remember the day. Courtney Scott also broke the girls' record that day. I was always fascinated. I had an office that overlooked Wanless Square, and I can remember you'd be training after school, and I remember the little round brick garden beds, and you'd be doing circles around them at the end of your training session. And it wasn't a one-off. This was a regular for you, Stu. What were you doing then?
Yeah, so it's kind of, with my coach in Ballarat, we'd always have a set amount of time we'd have to run for. So say I got back to school in I had to run for 60 minutes. If I had to go back at 57, I kind of had to make up that 3 minutes. So I think it was probably one of my biggest strengths. I was kind of good at following a program, and I was pretty committed. I kind of didn't want to cheat myself by only running the 57 minutes and telling him that I'm running the 60 minutes. So I'd always make sure I'm doing the full amount of time, and whether it meant I had to do an extra couple of laps around the brick buildings or the school oval, I kind of just added it on at the end and would try and make sure I did the time that I was telling my coach I was doing, not just for my benefit. I just kind of felt like in any sport, if you want to be good, you can't really take shortcuts. So that was kind of setting an early precedent for that.
That's an incredible story. 3 minutes in Ballarat winter, and you could be inside having a shower, getting warm, getting some food, but you're spending those 3 minutes. No one's watching you. Your coach isn't there watching you, and you're still doing that extra time. That's probably why you are the runner you are today, or part of it, because of that mindset. As you said, that's incredible.
Who would you say your greatest influence at your time at Ballarat Clarendon College was?
I'd say there's a lot of guys, especially a lot of the teachers I interacted with in the boarding house. A lot of guys like Spider Maloney. Obviously, I think a guy for me and my brother was James Evans, just purely because we had him as our homeroom teacher from year 7 in the senior school. I think those kind of guys, even a guy called Jason Hutchins, who we had for physical education the last couple of years, guys like that were pretty big figures for us. Obviously, we would always talk sport with them. They'd give us tips. And I think the big thing at college I always found was it didn't matter how big your goals were, your dreams, you'd always find someone willing to back you in that you could do it. I think the big thing was they were never afraid to dream big. And if you wanted an opportunity, they'd find a way to do it. I remember when I was in maybe 7 or 8, I kind of wanted to go do state cross country. And I remember the school didn't really have anyone that would go do it back then. But I remember talking to James Evans, and he kind of was able to find a way that they'd be able to register me, support me, and I'd be able to go and compete. So I think it's just things like that, obviously, were a huge influence that I found when I was at college.
Did you run for a club whilst you're at school, and how far did you think running could take you?
So I did. So I ran for school. So we kind of had like a little cross country squad at school for a couple of years, but I ran for Eureka Athletics Club in Ballarat. So that's one of the big ones they have there. But yeah, I think it's like Ross said, you don't realize how far you can go. I think when I was at school, I even think now when I was in year 12, will I ever make a senior Australian team? There's probably no chance I'm going to go to Olympic Games. I remember looking at some of the athletes you look up to, and you're like, how is it even possible that they're doing some of those things? So I think, it's crazy how quick it can become a reality if you keep working hard. I think the difference looks bigger than what it is for any athlete. You just got to kind of work out what you have to do to get to that next level, and then kind of back yourself in, and kind of half sport. They say half sports mental, half sports physical, half sports mental. So I think it's that big mental, just kind of believing that you can do it at the end of the day.
You finished year 12, then you just talked about the fact that even at that point you probably weren't thinking that you could make it as big in running. But you also started a teaching degree, is that correct?
So I started firstly, I went down to Melbourne. I studied podiatry at La Trobe University. So I kind of did that for just over a year, and I was kind of trying to balance that with running, and it kind of wasn't working that well just because I'd have to travel so far to go to placements and classes. And then I was starting to try, because I was close to making the Olympics in 2016 when I think I would have been just turning 21. So I kind of had to decide whether I wanted to go overseas and try and make 2016 Olympics or whether I was going to stay in Australia. And I kind of decided from that point on I was going to give it a good crack, and I was trying and go professional if it's possible. So I kind of decided, what else could I do? What did I enjoy when I was at school? And I really enjoyed PE. I enjoyed studying physical education. So I'm like, I might as well give it a crack as my profession. And I've been enjoying studying teaching ever since. I think I've got just over a year left, and then I'll be a qualified teacher, which will be nice.
The 3 years, so you talked about what you left school in 2013?
So I finished at BCC in 2013,
and then
moved down to Melbourne 2014 to start uni.
And you've just missed the 2016 Olympic team?
Yes, I think overall, I was 2 seconds off making the Olympic team in 2016. So I was pretty close back then, but it was really, I overperformed in that my first European season. Like, I went into 2016 with no chance of making the Olympics pretty much, and I was a couple of steps from making the team. So I definitely wasn't ready to compete at the Olympics. I would have been making up the numbers, but I kind of from that point thought, I'm close now. Give like 4 more years of training. I think I'll hopefully have a good shot of making the team, and then hopefully be able to perform well if I do make the team.
So in those 3 years from 2013, we talked about year 12, you weren't thinking about making teams and things like that, or that you couldn't. And now 3 years later, you're going, you know what? I'm 2 steps away, as you just said. I'm going to give this a real red hot go. 2017 rolls around. Really big for your career, from what I can gather, that the performances you put together in 2017, including your first Zatopek win. So that's the Australian 10K championship. Talk us through 2017.
Yeah, so obviously 2017, I kind of was so close in 2016 making the team. The goal was to make my first senior world champs team. So that was the big focus. And then obviously I was able to piece some good results in Europe. I was able to win a few relatively big races over there. And then I was able to book my spot on the world champs team for London 2017 world champs. So that was a big stepping stone to go from a good junior to being able to make world senior teams. So that was probably the first year of real development when I started running a lot of the bigger races overseas and started seeing the level that I kind of wanted to get to. I wasn't there yet, but I kind of could start piecing together what I needed to do to try and make that next step to being a good athlete overseas, not just in Australia.
Yep.
What was that experience like when you made your first senior national team?
It's pretty amazing. It's kind of that thing where it's like, it probably doesn't hit you straight away when you're announced on a team, but I think it's, you kind of, the week after, the days after, you think back where you started, like the people that help you along the way, how much it means to them. And I think being a kid, you dream of trying to represent Australia, but it just seems so far away. So I think it's those moments where you just like, it's kind of, you pinch yourself a little bit that you're actually going to get the opportunity to look down when you're on the start line. There's no better feeling than looking down and seeing you've got the Aussie uniform on. So I think, when you see that logo, it's probably one of the most special moments you'll ever have.
2018. I want to talk about one specific race, if I can, for a minute. And it intrigues me, this race. It was a 5K race in Ostrava, and it interests me for 2 reasons. The first is the format of the race, where after the first 1,600 metres, whoever crosses the line last as you go through that lap, they're eliminated, and so on every lap afterwards. That's a pretty, I think that's a pretty exciting sort of format to run. And what was it like to run in?
Yeah, so that was Ostrava Continental Cup. So it was, actually a 3K. But it was a cool event because the Continental Cup is pretty much every continent in the world selects 2 athletes. So I was lucky enough to be picked out of all of Asia Pacific to represent the continent. And then obviously you got 2 people from Europe, 2 people from Americas, and 2 from Africa. So I don't think there's a harder field to race against, just purely because you've got probably close to the 8 best guys in the world trying to race each other. And I think it was pretty interesting kind of race because every lap someone was getting eliminated. So when you got 8 good guys, you go on full tilt every lap
Yeah.
to try and survive. So I think by about the 5th lap, I felt good in the 5th lap, and I was like, I thought maybe I was a chance to maybe somehow get an underdog win, but yeah, I kind of died out a little bit. But I think I was 4th in Continental Cup, so to be 4th in a major like that was yeah, pretty satisfying result.
And that was also a big race for you because, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you knocked off 14 seconds off your PB.
Yeah, so it was a PB as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So and a massive chunk of time, and it puts your time down into the time where really good runners run. But the second part I wanted to talk about is what happened after the finish line in that race. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah. So I remember. I was crossing the line. I remember seeing the clock, and I looked like I knew I was on for a massive PB. Like 13 minutes for 5K is kind of like a pretty magical barrier. So I remember seeing 13 minutes just tick over when I was coming down the straight, and I kind of saw it go 13:01, 13:02, and I was like, I'm going to smash my PB here. I'm on here, and then I kind of was trying to overtake an African guy. I think he's from Ethiopia, and I was in lane 2 trying to get around him as well, and I had half an eye on the clock, and then yeah, I caught my spike with about 10 meters to go and kind of tripped over, and then I was flipped over the line, landed on my shoulder, dislocated. So I've gone from being like so excited I've run a 14-second PB to being in excruciating pain on the ground. So it wasn't nice. It kind of took it maybe 10 or 12 times to try and get my shoulder back in, which wasn't great. But I think when people ask me about it, I always say I was pretty lucky that I had a good race. It would have been a lot harder to have a shocker and then come off the track in pain and try and get your shoulder put back in.
And people don't associate. We associate, Aussie rules players with, strap it up and get out and play, or play the next week. You strapped it up and ran 10 days later, didn't you?
I think it was less. I think it was 7 days. So I remember getting it taped up. So I was in a fair bit of pain on the left side of my body, just because you get a bit of you still get, just when you're running, just when it was still inflamed, you just get a bit of jolting. So I kind of had it taped up. So I was almost in that next race the week after, trying to avoid using my left arm when I was running. I kind of had it just strapped to the side of my body.
I'm not sure how that works, Stu. You're keeping your left arm, not using it at all, but amazing performance. One of Australia's and indeed Ballarat's sporting icons, Steve Monaghetti, who's one of the long distance running gurus in Australia and one of our champions in Australia. And he said to me, but he's also been on record as saying that he cannot see any reason why you can't be one of the greatest Australian distance runners of all time, given the breadth of your achievements. That must be an amazing thing to take on board for someone as young as yourself, that Steve Monaghetti, who you would have run with, I assume, in Ballarat in your day, has said that about you. What did you feel when you heard that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty high praise coming from a guy like Steve. Obviously, he's in Ballarat, he's kind of like the king of Ballarat in some sense. But yeah, to have an Australian distance running icon like that, have praise for you is obviously pretty humbling. I think, yeah, it's pretty kind words from him. It kind of shows you that if those guys are thinking you can do something pretty good, it's kind of a little bit motivating in a sense that you want to try and prove them right, that you can do what they think you can do. So, yeah, it's obviously nice when you do hear things like that.
Go, Benny.
Would you eventually like to try a hand at marathon runners, since they don't peak until around 30 or 34 years old?
Yeah, I definitely think I'd like to do that. I think marathoning is the next progression once you finish on the track. I think I've shown that I'm pretty strong at 10K, so I think there's no way that it doesn't correlate to meaning that I can hopefully be good at the marathon. So I think, yeah, I'm definitely excited about one day going to the marathon. I think maybe another Olympic cycle, I'll kind of decide what I'm going to do and work out whether I want to stay on the track or go towards the roads in a couple of years' time.
Recently, the magical 2-hour mark was broken in the marathon, and you were actually one of the pace setters in that race, or in that event, weren't you, Stu?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough. The guy who broke it, Elliot Kipchoge, handpicked the 30-odd guys to be a part of his pacing squad, and I was lucky enough to be one of the guys he picked. So that was pretty amazing to be involved with, just to see one of the great probably not just the greatest distance runner we've ever seen, but one of the greatest sportsmen we've ever seen. Up personal, and seeing the 2-hour marathon be broken is something that I think is pretty crazy. When even when I was a kid, when guys ran 205 marathon, they're kind of like, oh, by 2080, they think maybe a guy might have a chance of breaking 2 hours, and then to be there live and see a guy do it was definitely something I won't forget. And just the event, I remember. I think so. It was a 5K course that they'd set up in Vienna, Austria, and I think they had 170,000 people packed around just a 5K course. So the atmosphere was absolutely crazy.
2019, pre-Olympic year, really important year. So it was important that you kept improving, and you did so. You did personal bests in the 2 mile and another Zatopek win, a 10K win. Plus that Zatopek win was a national record. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was able to get my 3rd straight national 10K title, which is obviously nice to conclude the year. And I was able to get the national 10K record there as well. So that was a pretty sweet way to finish 2019. I think I kind of went into the end of 2019. I probably wasn't in the best shape I had been. So kind of to run that in December, I was kind of good indications that if I could stay healthy and not have any interruptions at 2020, I should be able to smash a few big PBs. So that was a pretty good indicator for me.
And so you were tracking well then for Olympic team?
Yeah, so the 10K at the end of last year doubled for the Olympic trial. So pretty much if you win the trial and you have the qualifying time, you're automatic selection. So that was kind of nice just to book myself on the team for the 10K, and then I could kind of put my focus in the 5K trial, which was at the start of February in Melbourne. So you kind of, I think with any team, if you can, you want to pick yourself. You don't want to have to leave it up to any selection or discretion. So if you can just automatically book yourself, it's obviously a little bit of pressure off the shoulders, and you can kind of focus more on being ready to perform when the major does come around.
What do you put your continual improvement down to?
I think a lot of it, as I say, more of the same. I think the big thing is just putting year on year together. I think a lot of people probably fall into the trap where they go way too hard for a month or 2 months thinking you got to do everything. You got to smash training. You got to eat right. And they'll be so hell-bent on improving in that 2 months that they might not actually improve. Well, I think the big thing is you just got to keep putting the consistent years of training, try and stay healthy if you can. And then mentally just kind of believing that you can get better, and just keep pushing towards your goal. Even though I think any athlete will say you're gonna have interruptions, you're gonna get injury, you're gonna get sick, but it's not letting those little things kind of get in the way. You just keep moving, whether it's slow or fast, towards that final goal that you're trying to hope that you end up getting towards.
Obviously, disappointment that the games didn't go ahead. How hard was it you to stay motivated during 2020?
I was kind of lucky, just purely because obviously it was a little bit of a bum when I found out the games wasn't going ahead. But I kind of worked out I'd still get a European season in. So I think it's obviously it sucked a little bit at the time because I had obviously peaked to be ready to go when in August for the Tokyo Olympics. But I think in sport it's easy to stay motivated. I think every year you've got a new opportunity, you've got another race coming up, you've got a chance to get better. So I kind of looked at if the Olympics do move to 2021, there's no reason I can't get 10% better by then. I can't get stronger. I can't be in a better place to compete for a medal. So I think it was more taking those positives on and thinking that the games moving back here was an opportunity rather than sitting at home and feeling flat that you're not going to get to go to this year. I kind of think helped me get past it pretty quickly.
A great attitude and a great switch, as you said, pretty quickly into turning a negative into a positive. I do want to finish up with sort of talking about what your times actually are, because I've taught kids today, and we've been doing the 12-minute run as a PE test, and I sort of try to explain to them, I'm talking to this guy tonight and this is his time, and the kids are, no, you can't run that fast. I want to explain to people what you're running at the moment. So I said before, your lap of the late record is 18:38. Your 1K splits for your 1500 is a 2:20.3, which puts it, if we break it down into 100 metres, that's 14 seconds for every 100 metres.
Yeah.
14 seconds for 100 metres, 15 times in a row. Your 3K is at 2:29, so it's 14.9 second 100s. Your 3K PB, I also heard, Stu, and I might be wrong in this, it's a long deal. Middle distance running is very much dominated by the African nations. Your 3K time is the second fastest non-African time ever.
Yep.
Yep. That's impressive.
So yeah, not a bad stat.
Sorry?
It's not a bad stat.
That's an impressive one. Your 5K time, if we convert that out to 6K for the lap of the lake, is a 15:42. So you've gone from 18:38 to around, I'm going to put a little fade in there, Stu, just a little bit, because your 10K time puts you at 16:26 around the lake. So I reckon it's somewhere around about 15:48, 49, you could go on a good day.
I think with the lake though, you can cut off about 150 meters. So I think it's actually 5.8, just over 5.8K.
If any students,
so I don't think when monitoring
lake,
that record, I don't think he did the six. I don't think when monitoring the record, I don't think he did the full 6K. I think it was just over 5.8 as well. So
what is
we won't let him get away with it that easy. I think it's 16:10.
Is there a chance after the Olympics you will come back and have a crack at it?
Yeah, I would love to. I think any kid that grows up in Ballarat, the lake's kind of the pinnacle. I think how many times I've trained when I was up in Ballarat for school, I'd love to have a crack at it. I think the record sounds crazy, but I think it is definitely doable if you get a good day. But it's obviously hard to get a good day in Ballarat. You just never quite know with the weather.
Oh, it's beautiful here, mate. You've been spoiled in Europe too long. Europe summer. Come on, Ballarat's lovely. Stu, thanks for spending your time with us tonight. As I said, you're at the airport waiting to head off on a bit of a break after your great season you've had. We just want you to know that as a school community, we're so proud of what you're doing. So many people talk about your results when you have a good race, and around school there's a real buzz. Your name is known, and everyone is really keen to see how you go. So you will become next year we've only ever had 4 Olympians before, and yourself and Kat Wary qualified last year, but Kat still has to re-qualify. You've made it, so you'll become our 5th Olympian, which in itself, in 150-year history of the school, 156-year history of the school, is pretty impressive. Congratulations, and all the very best for Tokyo and the lead up to it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me on, Ross and Ben. Appreciate you having me on.
Not a problem.